that I know you now. Now there is a chance to find the joy now. There's more to me than now.
The original concept for the album was all songs in blue. Something new, something blue. Where the lead single or the lead song or the main foundation of the song was a song an ex of mine wrote, but she didn't give me permission. So something new, something blue just couldn't work. The title Opportunity was passed around a few times after the song on the album, and I then said, no, that can't work either. So then finally I had to do some soul searching, and since it was already coming out in the summer and everyone was talking about songs for the summer, well, I have the song for the summer, I said, well, I have about 10. So I started calling it Songs for the Summer because it's a more joyful theme than the last few albums have been. There's a lot more happiness within me with this album, or longing for happiness. And I'm way closer to it than I was when Slippery Hearts came out. So then I said to myself, if there's not going to be another album where you're going to be happy again, you might as well make it a summer album. So.
Little things I want to say, and I swear no harm can come to you right now. Right now.
The album starts with Dream I'm Living Through You, which I enjoyed the chords when I first recorded it because I wanted to be a more advanced guitar player, so I started fooling around with different variations of chords. Instead of using 3 fingers to play a chord, I used 2, and instead of 2 I used 1, and so on and so forth. And I remember when I first wrote the song, there was so many lyrics, and there were a lot of good ones in between the bad ones. So I listened to the record, and eventually I had to cut some things out and really make it more of a upbeat record than it was. I was on BandLab, one of the last times I used BandLab to write new material. And there was a disco drum pattern that was able to be looped. And with that, I said to myself, I've never done disco before, so I listened to a lot of it to make the record, and it eventually ended up sounding like Bob Dylan's Street Legal album, which, depending on how much of a Bob Dylan fan you are, or what your musical preference is, that could be good or bad. And I ended up taking the best bits and putting emphasis on those words and just writing and writing and polishing until it eventually became what it became. And for a while, it was the most well-produced song on the album, because at the time that was the only song that just was simplistic and didn't really need a lot of production choices. So.
The sadness turns into something serene, something out of a movie scene. The dream I'm a living gets me the very daily, quirky and silly, baby, 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 baby. If love's a drug, I'm hooked to you. This is a dream I'm living to you.
just. I was living in Georgia for the first time, and when I wrote it, I sat down with my guitar. I wanted to kind of change the tunings on my guitar, because after I started to see that my playing abilities weren't going to get as much advanced as they already had been, I wanted to experiment. So I experimented with detuning my guitar, and eventually ended up making a whole vast array of songs that haven't come out yet. But for right now, all I really did was put it from E tuning to the D tuning, standard tuning, and I did enjoy how much it sounded more country to me. So I started just fumbling around with that chord G in the beginning. It's almost classical in a way if you think about it. But when I play guitar, that doesn't really come out. So I remember I was home alone, everyone had left, and then they came back and I still needed to finish the song, but they wanted me to all go out to spend quality time with everybody. And so at the time, the person I was dating who inspired the album, I had to hang up with her, and I said to myself, more of my day I spent with her than with anybody else, because usually with most people I was dating in my teens, that was the case, because I just found comfort in being around someone who I loved, or at least whatever my interpretation was with love at the time. And in doing so, my head just started to think of all these fancy ways to say how much I cared for this person without saying I love you. Because that's really what it was about at one point,
Head is in the clouds. It takes a lot of strength for me not to say your name out loud. The night could fall and I could go blind, but your love, I always find. Just remember that I think of you whenever you come, whenever we're gone, whenever we want. Just remember there's a place for you to run to whenever you're.
Blue-Eyed Baby. I remember I had just started dating this girl who this album was kind of about and for. And we just started dating, and she was from Chicago. She had these glasses, blonde hair, blue eyes. She was the standard white girl. And I don't know how much trouble I'm gonna get in for saying that. But when I first started dating her, I just noticed these blue eyes, and I wanted to write about these blue eyes. Because, if I'm not mistaken, most of Slippery Hearts, at least the beginnings of it, we were still together. Days Like These is about her. Slippery Hearts sort of, in the beginning, was about her. But there were a lot of other songs that sort of explained how we were, because we ended up breaking up for the sole purpose of saying things too quickly and getting into things too quickly that we shouldn't have. And she even told me later on down the line that we were in love with the idea of being in love rather than being in love in general. But Blue-Eyed Baby was just a simple song. And later on, I tried to do a music video with this one girl from Connecticut who had blue eyes and just a beautiful woman. So she ended up sending me a bunch of pictures, so I sort of made a scrapbook in a way for the video. And when I did that, I gotta say, I was sort of weary about making music videos, because I think a lot it can be said better without videos, but something just felt right about this particular era.
Blue-eyed baby, how do you do that? How do you make a bad boy clean up his act? Blue-eyed baby, how do you do it? Take your mind and put it towards my gift.
New York. That was the first song that I actually made a full-on music video for with a good buddy of mine, Rap King. I call him Elijah because, I like to kind of break down the barrier between artist and person whenever I meet people, so I never really call people by their artist names unless I fully don't know their names. New York was probably the earliest song on this album, because it was a song I wrote at a time when I thought I was gonna be done with writing music. I had reached the point when I was living in Texas where music became a chore, and usually I say if music becomes a chore, I'm gonna take time to figure out whether or not I retire or just take a break. So at this time I thought I was just gonna fully retire. So I kind of had a Billy Joel River of Dreams album moment, and this song was, for me, the title track, because I was very homesick. I was sort of unable to establish a relationship with myself or with those around me. So I picked up, this melody in my head, which, with the chords, were the band's song that they were doing at the time, and I wanted to make a song with those chords because the way they were using them was just very boring to me, and I wanted to liven it up. So I took the chords and started to make the song.
Love yourself 'cause God wouldn't have made you any other way. Life and death and death and life happen every single day. The coldest winters turn me on, but you always find a way. Winds is loud, Helen's proud, and everything is the same. The people who survive on the minds will surely live another day. You got friends and family, you got the strength not to go crazy. You got nothing to lose. You have New York inside of you. You got friends and family, you
living in Texas, and when I started to get back into music. I had already written so many different concepts, but during this time, it was sort of my quote-unquote comeback or renaissance period, even though no one knew I had gone away in the first place, because I hadn't put anything out, but it was personal for me. So every song at this particular time was, this again, forever again, myself again, I'll never love this way again. So this song was originally called 10 Years Ago Again, and it reflects on the youth that was stripped away from you, that you wish you could grab one more time, that you took for granted.
We're going home, there's bills to pay, there's a soul crying.
There was a pregnancy scare. I had left New York to live with my mother, and a few weeks before I left, I was fornicating with this one girl, and she claims I had impregnated her. And the thing about it was, I didn't even get erect enough to impregnate anyone. And so, in that moment, knowing I wasn't a father or anything, I just said to myself, if that really was true, what would I do? Because I'm barely mature enough to take care of myself, let alone take care of a child. Would I have to tell the mother to, get rid of it, or would I have to, stand up and be a man? So all these things are going through my head, and I eventually just said, 10 years down the line, if I made a decision that wasn't for the betterment of myself, how would that look? So I listened to this Billy Joel song called This Is the Time that he wrote around the time he just had his first child, but he was way more mature at the time. And I just started writing. We were full of joy, we were adventurous, we were the epitome of what youth was supposed to be.
Years hasn't passed by, but it feels like it. I made a vow to stay with you, dead or living. In the past there was something that I can't recall. In the beginning there's a light that shines within the eyeballs. We may have acted silly, we may have been fools. I guess that's what it's like having the after school blues. In the past there was something that I can't recall. In the beginning there's a light that shines within the eyeballs. We may have acted silly, we may have been fools. I guess that's what it's like having the after school blues.
I know, that one is a lot. The girl I was dating, who I ended up writing all this stuff about, this whole album, or kind of conceiving it with her in mind, she was going through a tough time. She was going through a tough period. She was applying to college. She was preparing to just go anywhere. She was dealing with a mother who was a bit tough on her. And I wanted to help her so bad, but she was in Chicago and I was in Atlanta. So I went to do the one thing I knew how to do, and that was put on my guitar around my neck and just start strumming. At this time, I've discovered An Innocent Man by Billy Joel. And I wanted to write something like that without worrying about the high notes like he always does. So I just told her in a simple way that I know that things are tough, and I know that it looks bad, and while I may not know how bad it is for you, I know that when I deal with stuff, it's all temporary. So I let her know how much I care about the song. And I think she got the message.
Live a life like you live. It gets harder to deny. I know you're afraid of the feeling you can't use that gift. I know you're not gonna believe me, but loads of people love you. Just wait and see. I know you have a sense of courage, courage to use that certain gift. I know you're not feeling too well right now, but you have nothing to worry about. I know your time's coming soon. I know you're flying into the moon. I know the time is surely here. Just turn to the great ones and listen for that call in your ear.
Opportunity. This is probably the most autobiographical song of mine that I wrote. This was again in Georgia. I had written all these silly little songs around this time, and I just wanted to write something that was the realest that I could do. So I had to think to a more mature place and look back at everything I had done so far and just write. You know, I wasn't intending to make like an island-themed album. I was just trying to make something that was kind of a representation of who I was, not only as a writer, but as a person. So I just started to look back and say how wonderful I had become. You know, once I was a little boy who didn't care about a thing. Now I learned there are people who can use a song to sing. So I got my pen and I got my paper and I sat myself down and wrote what I felt strongly and made my own sound. That's probably the truest lyric that's been released so far, because I just write about the things I know and the things I see and the things I do. Very rarely do I ever write narrative songs. They're songs about other people unless I'm requested to, or they're just that like impactful in my life that I have to just write about what they're doing or whatever. And I played this song for a friend of mine who's a great singer. His name is Marlon Kamar, and I played it for him, and he told me that besides Forgiveness, which I was recording at the time, Opportunity's chorus is probably one of the best choruses he thought I ever wrote.
Yourself and believe that there's no higher power. The only ones who can save us from being to your power is our power comes from inside of you and the faith you have within. One more
time. The last song I wrote in Texas. because the day after I recorded this, I left for Georgia and never looked back. My mother had just passed, and she became my glue to who I am today. I became stronger because of her. I became so influenced, so it liberated for her. And then when she passed, I almost left this earth to be with her because it was just too much pain to bear. So I just said, I don't want to write anything, I don't want to do anything. But that just made it worse, so I eventually just started getting on the piano. And during this particular last weekend I was there, I had recorded 3 things. 2 of them were covers, and 1 was an original. And I was sort of recollecting all the songs I wrote in Texas as a quote-unquote greatest hits for myself to look back on. And I had all these songs, so I covered Melanie Martinez's Pity Party, which eventually ended up on Cover Me With Love, Sad by XXX, you know his name, and One More Time. One More Time was the most difficult song to make because I never, in all my time recording, had to stop because I was breaking down. And since it was only a microphone I could use, it would pick it up. So I had to just kind of breathe and just think. I know me and my mother have talked about everything and said all we needed to say right before she died, which I'm so grateful for. But if I had like 5 more minutes with her there and with her being around and, you know, being receptive, what would I want to say? And so I just started to play this melody. And when I played this melody, there was only one thing I wanted to tell her, is that you always told me that I kept you going, that when you wanted to quit. And so now that you're gone, I want to do the same thing for you that you did to me and keep going.
Sadness after this, no more missing your happiness, no more reasons to try to sit down and think and wonder why. One more time.
The next song. This is another straightforward love song, except this is probably the only song that's not about the girl whose this whole album was kind of conceived because of. I dated this girl who I wrote Bad Thing about. And when I wrote Bad Thing, you know, I was writing it just to be silly and it was a stupid song, but out of all the songs I wrote for this particular ex, this is probably the best one. Because I remember being so enamored with her. And just enamored, because she was in Georgia too. She was just like in a part of Georgia where I couldn't take a bus, you know. And I wrote just what I was feeling. It was late at night, so I just wrote the moon is out, moon is high, and then she came to my mind and I said, how could she be so much brighter than the sunlight? and when all the other stars were out, I kind of saw remnants of her name, who will remain nameless for this record, because I'm already kind of in trouble. I mean, my partner and I at this time are on a break, so when and if we do come back together, I know that we're gonna have a long discussion about this. But the stars, resembled her name a bit. So I just wrote, how can you be so bright in sunlight, constellations across the sky, the stars spelled out your name, each letter was mine. So that whole song just came naturally. I just had to think of a title for it because I just didn't know what to do. So before I did anything, I just wrote the next song because I just wanted to write something that was so good that I'd have no choice but to make it a song.
No doubt I have, because you make me sure. Perfection wrapped up in a bottle. Ascension, how you grab me like a model. Affection is what I need tonight. The next song I sing will get you to be by my side.
The last song of the album, Good Night. Again, inspired by Billy Joel's River of Dreams album, he wrote a lullaby for his daughter called Lullaby, Good Night, My Angel, and I just love that melody so much. So I wanted to write my own version of it. And I thank God that I don't know how to listen to songs so often that I learn how to play them, because I end up writing my own songs based off of it. It happened with quite a few songs. I can't think of any right now, but I was playing this and trying to look up the chords, and it's just, Billy Joel's song is just so classically inspired and so intricate that, you're bound to make up your own thing anyway. And it's a lullaby for me. I don't have a child, as I stated before, but I had to write a lullaby for someone, so I wrote a lullaby about the girl who this whole album's about. And personally, I think it better represents the kind of dynamic we had more than any other song.
You are the epitome of what people are supposed to be. If I could find you, I'd run to you in my sleep. What from your wings at me. Morning seems so far away. I get happier every day. You rest ever so delicately. Makes me wanna be free. Whatever has me oh so free. Just know it's easy to relax. See, you are one of those things that just makes me. You are the epitome of what people are supposed to be. If I could find you, I'd run to you in my sleep. What is the one thing you wish that I could try to say, my dear? The moves you make are so breathtaking from your happy tears. Darling, don't you know how much you are my pride and joy? I can say right here so truly. Let's have a baby boy. Just around the corner there's a special kind of song. I'm not like the others who never stay that long. You are the epitome of what people are supposed to be. If I could find you, I'd run to you in my sleep. What is the one thing you wish that I could try to see, my dear? The moves you make are so breathtaking from your happy tears. The moves you make are so breathtaking from your happy. Hope everyone stays safe, and I'll see you next time. Good night. Though I am young, I'm also wise. Although I'm happy, sometimes I cry. It's people like you that bring out the best. Because of you, you cleaned up this mess. It's 5 after 4. Time's just a score. It makes the sunlight last even more. It's people like you that bring out the best. Because of you, I wonder what's next. What's yours is yours. What's mine is mine. It can be ours, surely in time. What once was cheap is now rich. You're the light I surely switch. Beauty is in, your beauty is out. My heart shows me what you're about. The sun is the first, it's not the last. premature.